let's start with some questions that came from the tutorial of the game. MRD Gaming wants to know, that playable area during the tutorial, where does that take place? Is that in Trumbull Valley?
You're no doubt speaking of Camp Osprey, an abandoned military resettlement camp that we featured in that tutorial. No, that is not in Trumbull Valley. We really didn't make any specific claims as to where that location is, other than close enough to all of our other maps to drive there with someone who's sick and maybe dying of blood plague. So that's a little bit of use your imagination. It could be anywhere at all.
I mean, how far can a somewhat abused SUV drive with what you hope is a full tank of gas? Because they run out of gas when they get to their first destination.
Yeah, it's So, how big is the world of State of Decay? It's as big as any of you all want it to be, really. It's everywhere.
So we had a question about the characters in the tutorial. So Doug Dimmadome 11 asks, what was the process or the importance of the lore for the tutorial characters and their connected backgrounds? Even though the names differ, it seems like you were creating some very specific characters there.
That was definitely the intent. I wanted to... let me back up a little bit. State of Decay, the original, had a great pair of friends as the opening characters, and that relationship was really a meaningful part of both of those characters and the story that you play through in the game. We weren't going to be using quite the same approach of hand-generated characters, but I wanted to recreate some of that feel to get you attached to those opening characters that you start with. So having a pre-designed relationship for each of those pairs of characters was very important. The fact that I was able to convince design that to have 4 of these rather than just one gave us a lot of flexibility to create a range of relationships, from friends to romantic relationship to brother and sister, just a lot of different ways of showing up. Hey, here's 2 people who care about each other, and that's why they've stuck through all this apocalypse, stuck together through all this apocalypse.
Yeah, I feel like one of the only sort of like missed opportunities that we had there was the fact that we weren't able to continue those stories much further, much deeper into the game. And State of Decay 1 also had a little bit of that problem in that, eventually the Marcus and Ed specific content dries up, but we weren't able to even get as far as that game did.
Right. Basically, we could continue to pretend that those voices always were attached to those specific characters up until sort of the end of the training / tutorial in Providence Ridge that we added with the Juggernaut edition. Basically, as soon as you start recruiting people outside of very limited range, we no longer have control of what voices are attached to what characters, because all of our voices are getting reused over and over. So once we reached that point, we just didn't have the technical capacity to continue to tell character-specific stories with those. So we kept it going for a little bit, but it was a very sort of limited approach for how long we were able to tell those stories.
Yeah, we were basically sort of leaning on voice differentiation rather than creating some other method of tracking which character was talking. It's kind of leaning on the voice differentiation to give us those other characters.
Yeah, just a combination of limited resources, limited design capacity, right? We were still a relatively small studio when we were building that game, so we had to sort of pretend and hand wave in a few places in order to get a game of the size and scope that we wanted.